Okay, getting into part 2, there are no perfect victims, starting with Free Marissa and all black people. In these times, November 2014, what if she goes to jail again? How will you feel? The questions bring me up short. My goddaughter hasn't previously expressed an interest in Marissa Alexander. She knows that I've been involved in a local defense committee to support Marissa in her struggle for freedom. But up to this point, she hasn't asked any questions. Her mother, however, tells me that Nina, not her real name, has been following my updates on social media. I'm still considering how to respond, and I must have been silent for too long because Nina apologizes. Forget it, Auntie. She says, I didn't mean to upset you. It's interesting that she thinks I'm upset. She knows that I have no faith in the U.S. criminal legal system and perhaps assumes that I'm pessimistic about Marissa's prospects in court. I tell her that while I have no faith in the criminal punishment system, I'm hopeful for a legal victory in Marissa's case. I say that while the system as a whole is unjust, in some individual cases, legal victories can be achieved. I tell her that this is particularly true for defendants who have good legal representation and resources. Money makes a difference in securing legal victories. I explain that this is why I have worked so hard to fundraise for Marissa's legal defense. But how will you feel if she's convicted again, though? Nina persists. I'll definitely be sad for her and her family. I respond. I think that you'll be a lot more than sad, she says. Does sadness have levels? I guess so. I'm not sure what more than sad feels like, so I keep quiet. A friend who has spent years supporting Marissa Alexander through the Free Marissa Now national mobilization campaign recently confided that she was unable to contemplate another conviction for Marissa at her retrial in December. Many of us who've been supporting Marissa have been bracing ourselves, each of us trying to cope as best we can. Over the past few weeks, I'd taken to asking comrades if they believed that Marissa would be free. Some answered affirmatively without hesitation, but they were in the minority. Most eyed me warily and slowly said that they were hopeful of an acquittal. I don't think that they believed what they were saying. The U.S. criminal punishment system cannot deliver any justice, and justice is in quotes there. Marissa has already served over 1,000 days in jail and prison. She spent another year under strict house arrest, wearing an ankle monitor, costing her family $105 every 2 weeks. Marissa fired a warning shot to ward off her abusive husband, and no one was injured. For this, she was facing a 60-year sentence if convicted in her retrial. True justice is not being arrested and taken away from her children, family, and friends. Justice is living a life free of domestic abuse. Justice is benefiting from state protection rather than suffering from state violence. Justice is having a self to defend in the first place. Yesterday morning, I got the news that Marissa had agreed to a plea deal. A couple of hours later, the news broke on social media. I saw a mix of people celebrating this outcome and others expressing anger that Marissa was forced into a Faustian choice, and choices in quotes there. I got calls, texts, and emails from friends and family checking in on me. I appreciated everyone's concern, but I was unfortunately thrust into action when I heard that the grand jury in St. Louis would be announcing their indictment decision in the killing of Mike Brown later in that day. It was a mad rush to make arrangements to combine solidarity events, since we already had one planned for Marissa yesterday evening. The parallels between Marissa's unjust prosecution and imprisonment and Mike Brown's killing by law enforcement are evident to me. Yet I am well aware that for too many, these are treated as distinct and separate occurrences. They are not. In fact, the logic of anti-blackness and punishment connects both. In the late 19th century, a remark was attributed to a Southern police chief who suggests that there were 3 types of homicides. If a nigger kills a white man, that's murder. If a white man kills a nigger, that's justifiable homicide. If a nigger kills a nigger, that's one less nigger. The devaluing of black life in this country has its roots in colonial America. In the book Popular Justice, A History of Lynching in America, Manfred Berg makes a convincing case that the slave codes singled out blacks for extremely cruel punishment, thus marking black bodies as innately inferior. Hold on one second. I lost my space. As innately inferior, Berg argues. Colonial slavery set clear patterns for future racial violence in America. Innately inferior bodies can be debased, punished, and killed without consequence. The twist is that black people have always been considered dangerous along with our disposability. Mike Brown's disposable, in quotes, body is a lethal weapon, and so he's justifiably threatening. Marissa's, in quotes, disposable body is deserving of abuse and incapable of claiming a self worth defending. Mike Brown was described by his killer Darren Wilson as a demon and called an it. The doctrine of preemptive killing and preventative captivity finds expression in the daily lives of all black people in the United States. Black people are never innocent, and innocent is in quotes. That language or concept doesn't apply. We're always guilty until proven something less than suspect or dangerous. Marissa and Mike are inextricably linked. They can only be seen as the aggressors and are never the victims. Mike is painted as a super subhuman, Marissa is described as not seeming fearful. Black skin is a repellent to empathy, which makes it difficult to seek redress in courts of law and public opinion. If we can't generate empathy in others, then the humanity that is denied to us is always out of reach. So we combined our solidarity actions for Marissa and Mike yesterday because we take it as a fact that all Black lives matter. Charlene Carruthers of BYP 100 made this clear as she lifted up the name of Islan Nettles alongside those of Marissa and Mike. I'm not naive, though. I know that our response to the grand jury non-indictment of Darren Wilson unfortunately stands apart from some of the others. I thought about some lines from one of my favorite poems, Sister Outsider, by Opal Palmer Adisa yesterday. We, women black, we women black are always outside, even when we believe we're in. Marissa, Cece, Islam, Monica, Tanisha, and many others are often outside of our discourse about interpersonal and state violence, and so they are outside of our protests too. It's imperative that they be brought inside and centered. Marissa decided that she had had enough of living in the in-between, not behind the walls of prison, yet not quite outside. She made a decision for herself and her family to accelerate the possibility that she can experience again the unfree freedom that all of us who live Black in the United States should have when we aren't formally caged. She should have been able to demand total freedom, but this must feel like Everest. She took a plea deal that would ensure that she won't spend the rest of her natural life in a cage. As Elisa Barreria of Free Marissa Now said yesterday, the deal will help Marissa and her family avoid yet another expensive and emotionally exhausting trial that could have led to the devastating ruling of spending the rest of her life in prison. Marissa's children, family, and community need her to be free as soon as possible. However, the absurdity in Marissa's case was always the fact that the court punished and criminalized her for surviving domestic violence, for saving her own life. The mandatory minimum sentences of 20 years and then 60 years just made the state's prosecution increasingly shocking. But we have always believed that forcing Marissa to serve even one day in prison represents a profound and systemic attack on Black women's right to exist and all women's right to self-defense. When I've been tabling or facilitating teach-ins about Marissa, people sometimes ask if I know her personally. I don't. I can read the questions on their faces. Why then are you talking about her case? Why are you committed to her freedom? I devoted so many hours to raising awareness and funds for Marissa's legal defense because she is a human being who has been unjustly targeted and is still fighting to get free. I'm always on the freedom side. Still, let's see. Marissa's unfreedom cages me. Who will keep our sisters if not us? If I hadn't helped my sister, they'd have put those chains on me. They tied her body to a tree and left her bleeding until we cut her down and took her home as a daughter. Niobe Tsaba, Song of a Sister's Freedom, was the name of the poem right there, and the author. Yesterday, I stood in the freezing Chicago night with hundreds of other people to show our solidarity with Marissa. In our own way, we were cutting her down from a tree to take her home as a sister, until Marissa is free.